Welcome back to Enigmatic Echoes, where every shadow has a story and every legend makes you question whether humanity collectively needs therapy. Tonight's story takes us deep into the Oklahoma Panhandle, to a place nicknamed Oklahoma's Bermuda Triangle, which honestly sounds like the state itself looked around and said, "You know what this flat desert needs? Interdimensional horror." And somehow, people still camp there willingly. Tonight, we're talking about the Shaman's Portal, a legend tied to strange lights, missing time, disappearances, and a terrifying idea. What if some places on Earth aren't entirely connected to our reality? So dim the lights, lock the doors, and whatever you do, if the dunes go silent, don't keep walking. Let's begin. The story begins in the Oklahoma Panhandle near Beaver Dunes Park. The area itself is real, over 500 acres of rolling sand dunes sitting in western Oklahoma. And for years, locals have whispered about strange things happening there. People getting lost when they shouldn't, electronic devices failing, lights appearing in the distance, voices in empty stretches of land. Some call it coincidence. Others call it the Shaman's Portal. Now, according to the oldest version of the legend, the story dates back to the 1500s. Spanish explorer Francisco Vasquez de Coronado supposedly traveled through the region searching for gold. And according to the legend, local tribes warned him not to enter certain areas of the dunes. Not because of animals, not because of weather, but because something there wasn't natural. One version says they described it as a doorway. Others say they believe spirits crossed there. And then came the green lights. The legend claims 3 of Coronado's men chased glowing green flashes into the dunes before vanishing completely. No screams, no bodies, no footprints leading back out. Just gone. Some retellings even claim the disappearances were mentioned in Coronado's journals, though historians have never verified the documentation, and the supposed journal reference is considered part of the folklore itself rather than confirmed historical evidence. Now, historically, there's no verified documentation proving any of this happened, but the legend survived anyway, and over time, it evolved, because every generation added something new: disappearances, military activity, strange humming sounds, people losing hours of time, and eventually, the idea that the dunes themselves were hiding a portal. Now, here's where the legend gets interesting, because unlike most urban legends, people rarely describe seeing a monster. No ghost woman crawling backward through the sand. No antlered creature screaming at the moon. No, the fear comes from the environment itself. People who claim they visited the area describe the same sensation over and over and over again. The air suddenly feels heavy. Sound disappears. And the silence? That's the part witnesses remember most. Imagine standing in open land with wind blowing. You hear insects, grass moving, maybe distant coyotes. Then suddenly, nothing. No wind, no bugs, no movement. Just silence so thick it almost feels physical, like the world muted itself. One camper claimed he experienced it around 2 a.m. He said he woke up because his tent felt wrong. Not shaking, not moving, wrong. He unzipped the tent and stepped outside expecting wind, but the dunes were completely still. And in the distance, he saw green lights, floating. Not flashlight beams, not car headlights, just glowing green orbs drifting between the dunes. He said they moved unnaturally, too smooth, like they weren't attached to anything human. And then he noticed something worse. There were no sounds at all, not even his own footsteps in the sand. He said panic hit him instantly. Not fear, not anxiety, panic, like every survival instinct in his body activated at once. So he ran back to the campsite, and according to him, his friends were gone. Not missing forever, just gone. No voices, no fire, no movement. Then suddenly, they reappeared, walking out from behind the dunes confused, asking why he looked terrified. But here's the disturbing part. The camper claimed he had been alone for nearly an hour. His friends insisted they had only walked away for 5 minutes. Missing time, one of the most common elements in portal legends. And honestly, that idea scares me more than ghosts. Because at least with ghosts, you know what ruined your night. But losing time, that means your own brain can't even explain what happened. Now, there's another version of the legend. This one is far more modern, and unlike older Coronado story, most versions of this tale seems to come from internet retellings, paranormal forums, and regional storytelling rather than verified historical accounts. Still, it's one of the most repeated stories connected to the shaman's portal legend. According to the tale, a group of college students drove into the dunes late at night, hoping to experience something paranormal, which already tells you this story won't end well, because horror always starts with, "Bro, trust me." The group supposedly brought cameras, flashlights, GPS devices, and even EMF readers, because apparently every ghost hunter owns the same Amazon shopping list. At first, nothing happened. They laughed, recorded videos, made jokes. Then one of them noticed something strange. Their GPS stopped working, not uncommon in remote areas, except the story claims every device failed almost simultaneously. Phones froze, batteries drained instantly. One student allegedly said their compass kept spinning. And then came the humming. Low, vibrating, almost mechanical. One version of the story describes it as sounding like electricity buried underground. Then the group reportedly noticed someone standing on a dune. At least, they thought it was someone, tall, motionless, watching them. No visible face, no movement, just standing there against the night sky. One student supposedly yelled toward it. The figure didn't react, so they walked closer. And according to the legend, the figure suddenly appeared farther away. Same posture, same position, but impossible distance. Like reality skipped. That's when panic set in. One member of the group allegedly started crying uncontrollably. Another became nauseous. And then one student screamed, "We need to leave now." Not because they saw something specific, because suddenly they all felt it. That overwhelming certainty, like the land itself wanted them gone. Now, none of this has been verified. There are no police reports, no confirmed recordings, no documented witness interviews tied directly to the story, but versions of it continue circulating online because the details tap into something primal. The fear of isolation, the fear of losing time, and the fear that a place itself can feel wrong. Now, not every version of the legend involves campers or thrill seekers. Some stories are told more like local campfire tales, stories passed around quietly, without names attached to them. One of the most repeated involves a rancher driving near the dunes before sunrise. There's no verified record of the encounter, and the story exists mostly through regional retellings and paranormal discussions online. But the details remain strangely consistent across versions. According to the legend, the rancher had driven the same dirt road for years. Same truck, same route, same timing. Nothing unusual until one morning. His headlights stopped reflecting properly. That's how the story describes it. Not dimming, not dying, just not reflecting. As if the road ahead swallowed light instead of bouncing it back. The rancher supposedly slowed down and notices fog drifting across the dunes, which felt strange already, because the air had repeatedly been completely dry earlier that night. Then he saw movement, not directly ahead, off to the side, something pacing him from the dunes. At first, he assumed it was an animal, but according to the tale, whatever was stayed perfectly level with the truck, no matter how fast he drove. And then came the detail that usually gets repeated the most. The figure allegedly wasn't leaving footprints. The rancher supposedly looked over long enough to make out a shape, humanoid, thin, wearing what looked like layered fabric blowing in the wind. But the wind itself hadn't returned. The figure stopped suddenly, raised one arm slowly, and pointed toward the dunes. That was enough. According to the legend, the rancher sped away and refused to drive that road again before daylight. Now, could the story have grown more dramatic over time? Absolutely. That's how folklore survives. But locals still repeat it, especially the detail about the headlights, because multiple versions of the shaman's portal legend mentions light behaving strangely near the dunes, like it bends wrong or disappears too quickly. And honestly, anything that makes light itself seem nervous isn't somewhere of trying to vacation. So, what exactly is the shaman's portal supposed to be? Depends on who you ask. Some believe the dunes sit over unusual electromagnetic fields. Others think the shifting landscape causes disorientation and psychological panic. And then there are the paranormal theories. Some claim it's an interdimensional weak spot, a place where reality becomes thin. Others believe the area is connected to ancient spiritual practices, though there's very little verified evidence tying the modern legend to actual native traditions. And that's important to mention respectfully, because many online retellings exaggerate or invent tribal connection entirely. Most of what survives today exists as modern folklore, urban legend, campfire horror. But legends survive for a reason, not because they're proven, because they feel possible. And the Oklahoma dunes already feel isolated enough to let your imagination take over, especially at night, because flat land becomes terrifying when there's nowhere to hide and nowhere to stop staring into the darkness. Maybe the shaman's portal is nothing more than fear mixed with isolation. Maybe strange lights in the dunes have perfectly logical explanations. Or maybe some places on Earth don't behave the way they should. And maybe the people who ran from those dunes weren't running from something they saw. Maybe they were running from the feeling that something noticed them first. And honestly, if the ground itself ever makes me feel unwelcome, I'm leaving immediately. Because I ignore enough red flags in relationships already. I'm not doing it with interdimensional sand. But what do you think? Would you walk into the dunes to see the lights for yourself? Or would you leave the portal alone? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed tonight's episode, don't forget to like, follow, and share Enigmatic Echoes. You can also follow Enigmatic Echoes with Jazz on Instagram and YouTube for more content and late night horrors. Until next time, stay curious and stay out of places that suddenly go silent. Good night.